For generations, we believed the story of the planets ended with Pluto, the lonely ninth planet standing at the edge of the known solar system. It was a simple picture, a comforting one. But the universe had other plans, far beyond Pluto, where the sun has faded into little more than a distant spark. A silent world waited in the darkness. It did not seek our attention, nor did it require our warmth. For billions of years, it wandered through the frozen outskirts of our solar system, almost forgotten by time itself. Hidden beyond the familiar frontier, this distant world quietly carried a question, one that would challenge everything we thought we knew about the planets. Its name is Eris. She is not merely another frozen world drifting through the void. She is the reason astronomers were forced to redraw the map of our solar system, a world whose discovery quietly brought an era to its end. And yet, beyond the controversy, beyond the headlines, lies one of the strangest places ever discovered, a kingdom of eternal winter, where sunlight is barely more than a memory, and time itself seems to move differently. Eris travels through one of the coldest and most distant regions of our solar system. At its farthest point, it drifts nearly 15 billion kilometers away from the Sun, almost 3 times farther than Pluto lies today. At such an unimaginable distance, the great giver of life is no longer a source of warmth. It has become a cold, ghostly diamond, barely brighter than the countless stars surrounding it. If you could stand upon the frozen surface of Eris, you would find yourself in a world unlike anything on Earth. There is no wind, no flowing water, no sound, only an endless stillness stretching across a landscape of ice and stone. Here temperatures fall to nearly absolute zero. Cold enough that the very gases we breathe on Earth can no longer remain in the sky. Nitrogen and methane freeze solid, slowly falling back onto the surface as brilliant crystals of frost. Over countless centuries, this frozen snowfall blankets Eris in a fresh layer of ice, making it one of the brightest worlds in the entire solar system. It reflects almost every ray of sunlight that reaches it, yet so little sunlight arrives here that even this dazzling white world remains trapped in perpetual twilight. Beneath that brilliant shell, scientists believe a rocky interior lies hidden below the ice, although Eris is almost the same size as Pluto. It is nearly 27% more massive. A quiet reminder that appearances alone can be deceiving, a frozen shell hiding a surprisingly heavy heart. Perhaps the strangest thing about Eris is not its cold, nor its distance, but its relationship with time. Here on Earth, time rushes forward, cities rise, civilizations flourish, empires collapse, generations are born, grow old, and disappear into history. But Eris seems almost untouched by any of it. A single year on Eris lasts 557 Earth years, longer than the lifetimes of entire nations. The last time Eris occupied this exact place in its orbit, the Industrial Revolution had not yet begun. Steam engines had not transformed the world. Electricity had not illuminated our cities. No airplane had ever crossed the sky. No human had looked back at Earth from space. Yet throughout all of history, Eris has continued its slow and silent journey around the Sun, almost indifferent to the passage of time. Its orbit is far from a perfect circle. Instead, it follows a vast elliptical path, carrying it from the distant outskirts of the solar system to regions much closer to the Sun before sending it back into the darkness once again. A journey so immense that each orbit becomes a story measured not in years, but in centuries to this distant world. The entire history of modern civilization is little more than a fleeting moment, perhaps. That is why Eris feels so haunting. Not because it is hostile, not because it is frozen, but because it reminds us how brief our own existence truly is. While humanity measures time in years, Eris measures it in ages. For centuries, we imagined Pluto standing alone at the very edge of the solar system, a lonely frontier. the final world before the great unknown. But Pluto was never truly alone. Beyond Neptune lies an enormous ring of frozen worlds known as the Kuiper Belt, a vast kingdom of ice filled with countless remnants from the birth of the solar system itself. Many of these worlds have remained almost unchanged for more than 4 billion years, tiny, frozen, forgotten, yet Eris does not belong to this quiet neighborhood. Its home lies even farther away, in a far more chaotic region known as the Scattered Disk, a place where gravity has left deep scars upon the solar system. Billions of years ago, Neptune slowly migrated outward from the Sun as it moved. Its immense gravity disturbed countless icy worlds, flinging many of them into enormous, elongated orbits. Some were thrown completely out of the solar system. Others became wandering survivors, forever trapped on strange paths around the Sun. Eris is one of those survivors. Its orbit stretches across billions of kilometers, tilted far above the plane where the planets travel, while Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and even Pluto remain relatively close to the solar system's great cosmic highway. Eris wanders alone, taking a path few worlds have ever followed. It is not simply distant, it is an outcast, a survivor from an age when the solar system was still young, violent, and unfinished. For thousands of years, Eris remained completely unknown. Not because it was hiding, but because it was simply too far away. Even through powerful telescopes, it appeared as nothing more than a tiny point of light, almost motionless against the countless stars beyond. Then, in the early years of the 21st century, astronomers began searching the distant darkness beyond Pluto. They believed there had to be more worlds waiting to be found. Among them was an astronomer named Mike Brown. Together with his team, he carefully searched thousands of images, looking for the faintest signs of movement. Most people would have overlooked it, a single pixel barely shifting between photographs taken days apart. But in astronomy, even the smallest movement can reveal an entirely new world. In January of 2005, that tiny moving dot finally revealed itself. It would later receive the name Eris. At first, astronomers believed they had discovered something even larger than Pluto. The news spread quickly. Excitement turned into curiosity. Curiosity became uncertainty, because Eris carried with it a question that no one could easily answer. If Pluto was a planet, then what exactly was Eris? The discovery of Eris did far more than add another world to our maps. It exposed a problem that had quietly existed for decades. For nearly a century, students had learned that our solar system contained 9 planets. It was a fact that seemed beyond question, but Eris changed everything. It was almost the same size as Pluto, yet even more massive. If Pluto deserved to be called a planet, then surely Eris did as well. But there was another problem. Astronomers had already begun discovering more distant worlds: Haumea, Makemake, Sedna, and many others still waiting to be found. If Eris became the 10th planet, where would the counting stop? Would our solar system eventually contain 20 planets, 50, 100? For the first time in history, astronomers were forced to answer a surprisingly difficult question: what is a planet? In 2006, the International Astronomical Union gathered to decide. After days of debate, a new definition was introduced. To be considered a planet, a world must do more than simply orbit the Sun. It must also dominate the region around its orbit, clearing away most other objects through its own gravity. Pluto could not, neither could Eris. Both worlds became members of a new family, the dwarf planets. To many people, it felt as though Pluto had been stripped of its crown, but perhaps that was never the real story. Eris did not destroy Pluto. She revealed that Pluto had never been alone. Beyond the 8 familiar planets, there exists an entire kingdom of frozen worlds waiting patiently in the darkness. And with every new discovery, our picture of the solar system becomes just a little more complete. Eris is not alone. Orbiting this distant world is a small dark moon known as Dysnomia. At first glance, it seems insignificant, just another frozen companion, lost in the darkness. But without Dysnomia, the story of Eris might have been very different. In 2005, astronomers discovered the tiny moon circling its distant parent. Perhaps that is why Eris feels so haunting. Not because it is hostile, not because it is frozen, but because it reminds us how brief our own existence truly is. While humanity measures time in years, Eris measures it in ages. Suddenly, the question could no longer be ignored. If Pluto was a planet, then Eris surely deserved the same title. But if Eris became the 10th planet, what about the countless frozen worlds still waiting to be discovered? A single moon had transformed a distant point of light into one of the most controversial worlds in modern astronomy. Scientists believe Dysnomia was born long ago, when a violent collision shattered the young Eris. Fragments of that ancient impact gathered together, forming the moon that still accompanies her today. A silent companion born from chaos, forever circling a world that would one day bring chaos to astronomy itself. From a distance, Eris appears lifeless, a world locked beneath endless ice. A place where nothing could ever change, but appearances can be deceiving. Beneath its brilliant shell of frozen nitrogen and methane, scientists believe Eris hides an unusually dense, rocky interior. For years, it seemed like little more than a frozen relic of the early solar system. Then, the James Webb Space Telescope offered a new clue. By studying the methane covering Eris, astronomers found evidence that some of it may have been renewed from deep within the dwarf planet itself. If that interpretation is correct, then Eris may not be entirely dormant. Somewhere beneath billions of years of ice, there could still be traces of geological activity, a faint heartbeat inside one of the coldest worlds we have ever discovered. We do not know for certain, and that uncertainty is part of what makes Eris so fascinating. Even today, it remains little more than a distant point of light. Unlike Pluto, no spacecraft has ever visited Eris. Everything we know has been learned from billions of kilometers away. For now, its greatest secrets remain hidden beneath the ice, waiting. When we think about our solar system, we often imagine a neat collection of planets circling quietly around the sun. But Eris reminds us that reality is far stranger. Beyond the familiar worlds lies an entire realm of frozen wanderers, ancient survivors from the birth of the solar system, worlds that have spent billions of years drifting through the darkness, unseen and almost untouched by time. Eris did not destroy Pluto. It simply revealed that Pluto was never alone. It showed us that the frontier of our cosmic home is far larger, far more mysterious than we had ever imagined. Perhaps that is Eris's greatest gift. Not the debate it started, not the definitions it changed, but the reminder that every time we believe we have finished drawing the map of the universe quietly unfolds another corner. As we turn our gaze back toward the warmth of Earth, Eris remains exactly where it has always been. Patient, silent, unhurried, continuing its 557-year journey around the sun, long after our cities have vanished, long after our monuments have turned to dust, and long after our voices have faded into history. Eris will still be there, a lonely world drifting through the endless dark, a keeper of silence, at the edge of the known.